All right, here we are, Patrick. Welcome to Canucks This Week. Hope you had a good Easter.
Did.
Yeah, we kind of missed last week due to some technical issues, but we're back. We're
Also,
back.
Easter. I mean, isn't that kind of part of the stories? It's just
Yeah.
the week always just kind of dies. Hey, it always kind of dies in front of you. Hey.
um, all right, let's talk Canucks here. I don't know if people have angst about the Canucks plight. When you look at the standings, maybe you can give up on the President's Trophy at this point. If you look at all the teams sort of at the top, obviously Dallas is hot. They've won 8 in a row
Yeah.
at the time of our recording. But,
Yeah.
a lot of the top echelon teams are in this, 8 wins, 5 wins, 6 wins. Like I don't want to say things have leveled out, but
Yeah.
people may be frustrated that the Canucks have had a few losses lately, and I've seen some stuff like I thought this team was a genuine cup contender. Now I don't think they'll get by the first round.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of that on social, whether it's accurate or not. Obviously they're missing their starting goalie, which has made a big difference in some games. What's your thought on where this team is, and if you were a fan, not an objective reporter, would you be nervous?
Well, I'll go back to how I was writing my story last night, and I was telling someone about this. I at the nearing the end of the game, or at least you go with, okay, I think they're gonna win like 1-0. We're kind of where they're at, and then it's 1-1. You're like, oh boy. And I mean, my original lead essentially was what ended up being like the second item in my story. But as if you're not worried about you weren't worried about the offense before this week, you should be now, because one, or was it two, even strength goals against two of the worst teams in the league in Anaheim and Arizona. The team has been struggling to generate offense. Elias Pettersson, what is it, 8 of the last 10 games, no points at all. He's clearly struggling. Like they're having a hard time of making things happen. In comparison to the way things started at the beginning of the year, we knew that at the beginning of the year everything was going in relative terms, right? Like we knew that wasn't going to carry on forever. This is kind of the other swing of the pendulum now, right? Like they're kind of the other end, and if you're looking for a hopeful thing, it's that, well, they're probably not as weak offensively as they've been, right? Like they were never as strong as they were to start the season, but they're somewhere in between there, and that's not bad. And they're still playing pretty well defensively. Um, they're getting excellent goaltending no matter who's in net, but like there's 6 games to go, and then it's the playoffs, and obviously things can turn quickly, and you can recover yourself and get back on the footing you need to be, but time's running short for that. And yeah, so if you're feeling a bit angst as a fan, I can totally appreciate that. I think on the whole, though, I think fans are pleased with where the Canucks find themselves. They're in an unexpected spot. They're still 4th overall in the NHL. They're probably almost certainly going to win the division. Probably not going to win the conference anymore. I think the Stars, maybe the Avalanche, are going to be able to pull that out. I think it's going to be the Stars. Canucks have had a strong season, right? Like a much stronger season than anybody I think was even hoping for. The people were, I think, were sort of hoping for that same as Jim Rutherford. Things go right, we'll be a playoff team, which meant like 15th, 16th,
Yeah.
and they're not. They're going to go into the playoffs with a strong chance of winning the first round. They're not going to be a odds-on favorite, but they're going to have a strong chance. So yeah, they're in a decent spot for despite everything, and despite whatever angst might be felt in the moment.
I was smirking earlier just when you said, can they turn it on? And it just reminded me of one of Jason Botchford's great rants about flipping the switch. Like, can they flip the switch, right? But
Yeah.
it is a weird time of year.
Damn, gonna be good.
Yeah, exactly. It is a weird time of year though, because you have these teams like Anaheim and Arizona who the pressure's off for them. They've got nothing to lose, except more games, which they've lost a lot of. And then you've got a lot of these teams that have clinched. And so I'm even though I think the players will genuinely want to flip the switch and turn it on, I think sometimes like it's a long season and the playoffs, they can say they're not focusing on the playoffs, but I think that's a little hard to do. Um, I do want to address that fan angst thing though, and because of what you were talking about with expectations. I've I've found some of the angst that I see coming from Canuck fans a little puzzling because of what you said. The expectations going into the season were so low. It was just like, can we be in the playoff hunt? Not even make the playoffs.
Yeah.
From what we've seen, they get in. Not only do they get off to this great start, they maintain it for most of the year. And so when they've lost games, I've been a little surprised that people are like, the sky is falling a little bit. But then today, I'm in the middle of my news meeting and I have playing in the background one of the teams that I'm a fan of in Liverpool.
Okay.
And they're playing the worst team. They're in this dogfight with 8 games left for the title in England. And they're playing the worst team in the league in Sheffield United. And they're winning 1-0. They had about 30 chances, couldn't score. And then Sheffield score just one of the most ridiculous goals. And all of a sudden it's 1-1. And I'm like, oh my God, this team is throwing it away. So then when I come from the media point of view, I have to think like a fan.
Right.
And so, like, no matter how good your team is, and you still take those losses personally, you still, when you have real expectation and that hope is gone, it's a little bit strange. I did want to raise something with you here. Okay, we know we'll do our, like, how many games in the next week later. Do we think they'll win? Kings, obviously a tough game, then Vegas. Yeah. But I got my eye on a week from Saturday, that game against Edmonton, only because how long it's been since they played the Oilers.
Sure.
And so I'm looking in the next little more than a week. You're going to play LA. You're going to play Vegas. You're going to play, they've got a game against the Coyotes in there, and then you play the Oilers. Like, which do you think the Canucks should try and engineer a matchup here, or just where are the good matchups, where are the bad matchups? We'll get into a more forensic, how do they fit against other opponents. But as you watch, in particular, these 3 other teams that have aspirations, like, how do you think the Canucks match up against these big heavyweights?
You mean engineer a team they want to play against?
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be challenging given that, it's a 7-point split between the Canucks and Oilers, but as someone pointed out to me, it's really 8 because the Canucks have all the tie. Like, they have the first tiebreaker, right? Like, if they were to finish tied on points, the Canucks would go ahead. So Edmonton needs to completely overhaul them. Edmonton has 8 games to go, but they need to make up 8 points difference, basically. And that's going to be, I mean, they've been having such a strong season. They've been playing well, but look at them. Like, even their pace, they played this incredible pace, and they've gotten to where they are. Now they're 5-3-2, and they're sort of stuck where they are. The Canucks have gone 4-5. The Canucks aren't playing well, and they're still 5-4-1 their last 10. Well, Edmonton's 5-3-2, right? So that, that kind of idea is out the window. But yes, you're playing the Oilers, a much better test this time round than when we saw them earlier in the season. A much more organized team, a much more sort of structured team. A team that is going to be rightly a threat to make in the playoffs, whether they finish, despite the fact they're not going to win the division. So, I think the Canucks sure are going to sit back and look at which opponent they have. I do still think that on the ice they'd rather match up against Nashville, just because I think the Kings are so stout defensively. I mean, we've seen that experience obviously firsthand lately, and how hard they are to break down. And from a media standpoint, what an awful team to watch. Really, they're killing hockey. It was Nikita Zadorov, but no.
So I saw some of this again. To go back to the fans, I saw some of this. The Kings should be ashamed at the kind of hockey. You win. You try and win by any means possible. And if that's playing to your strengths, then you play to your strengths. It may not be good to watch, but if it gets results, why do people fault them? Not everyone can play fire wagon hockey.
Yeah. Possession is death, or whatever it was Mourinho used to say. Like, I don't want the ball because you're never going to make a mistake. Like,
park the bus and the truck in front of the goal. Yeah.
No, but anyway. No, I think in the end the Canucks need to find their way, right? Like, they need, like, it is that flip the switch point, right? Like, they can't just sit back and hope it all works out. Like, they need to start getting back on to where they were. And there were, there were elements of last night's game against Arizona where you could see they were the better teams for 2 periods. They were like, it wasn't even close. They were struggling somewhat to generate chances, but once they started really pressing things in the second period, they started uncorking stuff, right? It was a bit of a question getting stick on the ice. They still have been falling back, I would say, too much on the point shot, hoping to find a tip in front, hoping to find a rebound. Teams have caught on to that. And if anything, look at that goal that won the game. I mean, Quinn Hughes was obviously massively important. He's playing from the point, but he brought the puck in from the point and took a shot from the top of the slot. And that created the problem. There was movement, there was dynamic play. It's the same as the power play, right? Like the power play has had a lot of really ugly moments lately, but they've scored 3 games in a row. They're finding a way to get it done. They're doing it differently. They're not quite where they should be, which is look all the way back to last week in the game against the Stars and the goal that Rupi Heinz scored where it came off a high stick that everyone thought was a high stick except the referees in the NHL and perhaps the Stars, I guess. But the way they move the puck, and Brock Besser made this point to me when I talked to him on the weekend, that he said, look, first of all, no matter what happens, whether they made the call or not, like they made a retrieval. They got the puck back, right? And then they moved it immediately. Bang, 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 right? And it was on another guy's stick, and like the Canucks were spinning. The Canucks still almost managed to cover up a playoff, but they were still spinning, and you have to get your defenders on their back foot. And the Canucks have done that plenty this season. They need to get back to that. They need to find a way to get to that. So that to me is the focus of what you're looking for in the next 2 weeks here, basically.
That's really good analysis. Thanks for that. I'm being genuine, by the way,
Okay.
because I was going to ask you about what they needed to do to kickstart their offense. But since you've kind of answered that, Pettersson, should people be concerned? I mean, you can talk about systems and like teams cottoning on what they do, but this is a guy that when he is firing, he has that quick release. He has that shot. He gets into the positions where he can get the puck off his stick quickly. And the lack of production has to be alarming. I don't think that there should be any worry that he signed his contract and now he doesn't really care. But what does he need to do to spark results? Because it's one thing to play well, and that's fine. But once you get to the playoffs, that ramps up. If you're highlighting how many games he hasn't scored in here, you go the first 3 games of a playoff series and you haven't got a point, or you've only got one. Believe me, he's going to hear it.
I mean, he's done it before, right? Like he was 18 points in 17 games in the bubble playoffs, right? Like there was a challenging environment, even before he got on the ice. Mentally, it was a very tough time, and he performed. He did everything he could to get his team as far as they could. You look at that, and that's important. And you look at a lot of things he has. He was the player of the month, the 3rd star of the NHL in January. Like he has been going this season. He's just in a slump. Now, listen, I've asked a few people around, obviously not on the road right now. When he comes back, maybe something to try to press. He's not going to say, yes, I am injured. But you can't help but wonder if there's is there something bothering him? These are all the things you kind of go through. Is there something bothering him sort of physically? Is it simply a lack of confidence? I tried asking a couple of people about that. Like, people are being very careful in discussing. People who are sort of in his orbit and around him are very careful in discussing where he's at. So I don't really know, other than he's a player that looks to me like he's at the very least lacking in confidence. Like, think about, there were 2 plays that stand out to me from Arizona's game that I think sum it all up. There was a play, I think, in the second period where he takes the puck, he gets it sort of top of the attacking zone. There's a bit of disorder in the Arizona defensive structure, and he attacks the space. He attacks right up the middle, down right into the slot, and he looks like he's about to basically power his way into a great shooting spot, perhaps even past the defenseman, take the puck in on net, and instead he passes off. He passes off to the wing to Niels Höglander. It's sort of a 2-on-1. It's sort of a late developing 2-on-1. Höglander doesn't have a heck of a shot. He looks at it, doesn't shoot, does try to see if he can maybe get it back to Pettersson, but the defenseman, whoever it was for Arizona, played it perfectly, took the pass away, and instead the puck ends up behind the net. Nothing happened. And instead, you would have liked to have seen, you're saying, what are you doing, man? Like, I have seen him last week trying to stick handle through traffic. So why not there? Is that just a misread? Are you lacking that much confidence? The other one was late in the game. He gets the puck in the neutral zone. Arizona's empty. Net is empty. He's got Ilya Mikheyev on his wing. He does a little cutback, gets himself into a spot where he can actually face the net. As far as we can tell from the TV, the stick and the puck are facing the net. There's nobody between them. And instead of trying to fire it in the net from the neutral zone, he fires, I think, what is actually really quite a risky lateral pass across the blue line to Mikheyev, who mishandles it. The puck goes in the corner, and Arizona gets possession back. And the thing was that even if he didn't score, like, first of all, hit the net. Come on, you can do it from there. But even if he were to miss, he's got Mikheyev tearing down on to the puck. Like, he's going to get that puck back, and you're going to have control. It was just such a strange decision. And to me, like I said, it goes back to a player who, at the very least, looks like he's not playing with any confidence.
So you think it's more mental and physical?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing at this point, and I'm hesitant to speculate, but this is what it looks like to me. It keeps looking like there's a player who's lacking in confidence. The puck comes on the power play, he double clutches, he's not letting it go. He's reluctant to shoot. Nobody has said, yeah, he's actually dealing something, but so the conclusion is that this is a player who's lacking. I mean, he hasn't scored, right? Like, this is a player who scores and who plays with confidence. And normally, he's a guy he's said to us many times past, I want to have the puck. That's why I back check the way I do. And he's had the puck and he hasn't been able to make anything happen with it. So I land on confidence at the very least.
I'm going to ask you to close your ears for a second while I do the Jim Halpert and speak directly to the audience, but just kidding, you can listen. This is going to Inside Baseball a little bit. We certainly appreciate your patronage, you watching, reading, following all of Patrick's content. But the media business is a tough business, and we have not traveled in the last 2 years. We have to cover the team from Vancouver, and there are things we're doing to try and mitigate that. So Patrick, you can start listening again now. How, as we can't go on the road with the team right now because of the way things go in the industry. But how important is home advantage for this team in the playoffs?
Massive. I mean, look at they've been a good road team. I mean, they wouldn't be in the spot where they are without being good on the road, but they're 25-9-4 at home, right? Like, there's two teams that have fewer home losses than the Vancouver Canucks. That's the Oilers and the Avalanche, right? There's a couple other teams that have lost 9 games as well. But the Canucks have been a powerhouse at home, and that's what you're supposed to be in the NHL, and that's been a huge part of their story this season. They have if I'm not mistaken, the second best goals against in the league. Not quite. No, I take it back. They have the 5th best goals against, 204 goals against. Like, that's outstanding, right? Like, this team has been playing really well. If you zoom out at the season, the overall average of the season has been a really strong season. Now, obviously, a lot of that driven was by the wild stuff at the beginning of the year. But so much of this season has been built on strong play in all parts of the rink. Their penalty kill is not amazing, but it's not horrible. A couple weeks ago we were talking about it, and I remember saying, like, they got to figure that out. You cannot be in the bottom third of the league, and now they're a league average, which is, you still want to improve from that, but they're not a disaster. The power play obviously needs to find its way, but the power play has started scoring again. There's lots of little bits here that are trending in the right direction.
Travel and playoff matchups obviously will come more to the fore. And I used to absolutely despise the narrative where the team would be on a road trip, they'd come home for one game, they'd go out for another road trip, and they'd be like, they've been in 8 different time zones, like counting the home time zone. It's like, and I get it, travel's been rough on the Canucks. You've heard me say probably 5 or 6 times this year, this has been a dream schedule as far as I've never seen the Canucks with a schedule like this. The last time they played a game that was more than an hour outside their time zone. February 19th against Minnesota, as far as I can tell, unless I'm making an error here. The last time they were on the Eastern time zone was Washington on February 11th. So when you look at how they finish, there is the last game of the season in Winnipeg, which is the furthest they will have been afield in 2 months. Obviously they've got a game in, but the way this schedule was backloaded they've been playing all Western teams, even on the road, and then massive amount at home. So it will be interesting to see the matchup if they are back into a little more of a tougher travel situation, but you cannot argue with this team being rested. And I was going to suggest that about Pettersson. If there is something, a nagging industry, or a nagging injury, just sit him for a couple of games. Like honestly, like get right for the playoffs.
Yeah, we'll
But
see. I mean,
anyhow,
yeah, you nailed something. You've absolutely nailed something though. Like this is a team that has had things set up well for them, and that is perhaps some of the story why, as poorly as they may have played many nights, it hasn't been a complete disaster. That they are playing some soft opponents. They weren't great against Anaheim. They weren't great against Arizona, but they still got the wins, right? They were maybe a bit unlucky to lose to the Stars, maybe a bit unlucky to lose to the Kings. Both those games they were in. Beat up on the Flames, beat up on the Habs. Were good enough to beat the Sabres. Brutal against the Capitals. Played well against the Avalanche. Great against the Jets. Great against the Knights. Great against the Kings. Beat the Ducks. Brutal against the Kings. Brutal against Pittsburgh. Great against Boston. Brutal against Seattle. Not great against. It's been a lot of like great and not great, and some of those not greats they've managed to pull out wins. And to me, that's still the story here, is that they're doing enough nights to get wins, enough wins, and they're they've got 102 points. They're going to end up there's still 6 games to go. I mean, they're not going to end up 100. They're not going to win all 6 of those games, but they could end up with like 110 points. Like it's not impossible to think that they're going to end up with like 110, 108 points. Like 108 points is kind of the minimum where they're at this point.
You talk about how this season's been set up, and we'll finish up here just by doing the weekly. How many are they going to win? But assuming Demko comes back and can get some timing and not dealing with rust issues, like that's also been a massive thing to because people were talking before he got injured about like don't wear him out, and we're seeing I've seen that question about Winnipeg. Winnipeg have hit the skids, and like have they like played too hard, played Hellebuyck too much? But it will be an interesting next week. Of course, they've got a couple of days off here as we record this on Thursday, but then you're in LA at home on Monday against Vegas, and then at home against Arizona. How many of those 3 do you think they'll win?
Well, the Kings game is going to be so tough. I mean, they want to win that one, but I just haven't seen enough. So I think that's a loss. They'll want to get back against Vegas. They played well against Vegas for the most part this year. I think they'll beat Vegas, and they've got to beat Arizona. I mean, it's it's a similar kind of setup, right? Like they're playing Arizona after playing a tough opponent, right? And I think they're going to be set up for it. It's a tough week. They've got Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, with the Kings, the Knights, the Coyotes, and the Oilers. It's a tough one. But you know what? If you're looking for sort of a way to kind of get yourself emotionally ramped up, just as the season's about to come to an end, you can't write it much better than that. And then finishing the season against the Jets in Winnipeg, that's gonna be a tough game. I think it's just everybody's gonna be looking past the playoffs. We still don't know the schedule yet. I heard from someone today that they are looking to have at least a Canadian team start on April 20th. I think it would be brutally unfair if that was the Canucks, because they'll be coming back from Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg makes more sense because they'll be starting at home as well. As it stands, the Oilers will be starting at home. I haven't actually looked at their schedule, but I would say 2-1 over the next week, because I mean that's kind of how their season's gone.
Coyotes are a gimme, and they split the other 2, right?
Watch it be the other way. That they lose the Coyotes and win the other 2 games. Like it'll be something like that. But I think 2-1 over the next week is a fair thing.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks for this, Patrick. Thanks to everyone for watching, listening, supporting us. We're doing what we can to maybe get PGA back on the road so he can live up to his Instagram handle.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you next week.